Welcome to the Hoard's Dairyman podcast, your source for trusted, science-based information you can use in your dairy. The host for today's show is the managing editor at Hoard's Dairyman, Kylene Anderson.
Five billion gallons of milk were sold in the U.S. in 2024, up almost a full percentage point over 2023. Today, we welcome the CEO and Chief Marketing Officer of MilkPEP, a marketing organization funded by U.S. milk companies to drive consumer demand. With almost 30 years of integrated experience across consumer packaged goods companies and marketing agencies, she joined the MilkPEP team in 2019, seeking to be a catalyst for change, with a goal of both propelling the dairy industry forward and driving reconsideration of milk through strategic and meaningful programming. Milk volume sales in 2024 finally experienced growth after 15 years, as well as showing up in popular culture. The New York Times recently described dairy milk as culturally inescapable. We welcome Yin Woon Rani to the episode today. We are excited to talk about fluid milk's comeback and some of the exciting campaigns happening around the country. Yin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're really appreciative of you joining us. We'd love to hear a bit about your background and the journey that it took you to the role that you have today.
Yeah, sure. I have been working for almost 30 years. I spent two-thirds of my career on the agency side, both creative and media agencies. So I worked across a wide range of clients, but a lot of CPG, a lot of CPG food clients like Smuckers and Conagra. And then I was at the Campbell Soup Company for about 5 years. My last role there was as a Chief Consumer Experience Officer, which was a great experience and great preparation for today's role, where I joined in October of 2019. And I've been in this job for about 5.5 years. And I always say it's my favorite job ever.
That's excellent. I think that's really exciting and a unique perspective that you bring. So, for listeners to understand MilkPEP, can you tell us a bit about the structure and your focus on fluid milk? And then, can you kind of move into how your efforts are separate, but often in partnership with the farmer funded DMI?
So MilkPEP is probably best known as the organization behind the famous Got Milk Milk Mustache campaign, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. PEP actually stands for Processor Education Program. So it is one of the many commodity checkoffs in this country, which I think is probably your listeners know, where dollars are assessed from, in our case, it's actually from the volume of processed class one fluid milk, which creates a war chest of about $80 million. And we work, as you say, in close partnership with Dairy Management Inc., DMI. Their assessment comes off of all the raw milk that comes off of farms, regardless of final use, be it class one, class two, class three, class four. And so they're a much bigger program. They have a bigger agenda, frankly. At MilkPEP, we are 90% focused on promotions, consumer-facing promotions, and then we do a good amount of work to help our processors extend their programs and help with their retail customers. And we've been working very hard with DMI over the last, I would say, 10 years, even before my tenure, to be in really good collaboration and partnership with them so that we're dividing and conquering. We've really worked to deduplicate efforts. We're very clear swim lanes. Firstly, they have to support all dairy products, and we have the privilege in many ways of focusing only on fluid milk.
That's really fantastic. Well, you mentioned the big picture of the Milk Mustache campaign. Let's even step back and talk about those years gone by. Can you take us through the journey of the Got Milk Milk Mustache campaign and where we are today?
Yeah, I mean it's a long story in many ways, but in fact one of the reasons I was excited about the job is Got Milk is honestly one of the most iconic campaigns in America and maybe in the world. It has amazing recall. Even today, when the campaign has not been in market for 10 years, over 70% of kids under 18 still recall the campaign. And the recall among adults is like in the 80s or 90s. So it was a really long-standing campaign. Got Milk as a line was actually created by the California Processor Program. and they're best known for the kickoff ads about with Aaron Burr and the deprivation strategy. So the national program took Got Milk as the line and attached it to the celebrity-based campaign, where basically the idea was everyone drinks milk, right? Even the most famous people across a wide range of industries, and we've had everybody in it, from sports figures, athletes, of course, rock musicians. Taylor Swift was in one. I mean, at that time, it was everybody was in one, and they all wanted to be. We didn't have to pay them a lot because it was very prestigious to be in a Got Milk ad. So it ran for, I think, almost 20 years. We dominated print publications, and it was just really memorable. And today, like, we talk a lot about reinventing the things that make Got Milk very powerful. We are still working very hard for milk to be part of pop culture, but pop culture is so different than the way it used to be. And in fact, we're leveraging many more social media influencers, as well as occasional celebrities. But social media has changed the landscape of advertising. So we have a big army of creators and influencers, over 200 a year, where we find authentic milk drinkers first and foremost. We try not to pay people, quote unquote, for their endorsement. We find people who have a real milk story, who are real milk fans. And actually, it's not as hard as you think. I mean, milk is still a very common and enjoyed and popular drink. So, especially now, when we first started, people were not as eager to endorse milk. And now we have people coming to us to wanting to be seen as milk fans and to tell their story publicly. So that's been really great. So that thread of everyone drinks milk, everyone has a milk story, I think is still current today. We're just expressing it in different ways in a much more social media driven way than through print.
Oh, that's great. I can remember, I think it was one of the original TV commercials where it was someone with eating lots of cookies and then they went to the refrigerator and there was no milk.
Right.
And that was a panic moment for that. And that was really, I feel like, the kickoff of that campaign. So
Yeah, CMPB, which is the California program that came before the national program, that was their core insight of what they call the deprivation strategy. Because I think we believed, and we believe still, that milk is a little bit taken for granted by most people. And in fact, you only miss it when you don't have it. And so, be it cookies or peanut butter or whatever, when you don't have it, suddenly like, oh, I really miss it. And so that was the core of their strategy for a long time. They've done many things since then, and we've done many things since then. Right now at MilkPEP, we're very focused on positioning milk as a performance drink, originally for athletes with Olympic sponsorship, to saying that only the essential nutrients that you can get in milk can fuel your performance as an elite athlete. And we've now expanded that to sort of everyday athletes, to video game esports competitions, and even to working moms and other moms, because we believe that being a mom is like the hardest sport in the world. Honestly, it's 24/7. You get no training. There are no days off, and so we think that milk's kind of nutrition powerhouse status is so critical for fueling performance, whatever your job is.
yeah, I second that.
Indeed. So,
As a mom. Was just thinking as you were talking there about the deprivation and that original campaign of emergency situation if you don't have milk in your house. Would you talk a little bit about shelf stable products and kind of how that has changed the landscape of what you're doing?
yeah, I mean, it's still a smallish part of the industry to today, but it's growing fast. I think for a long time, my understanding is Americans particularly much prefer the taste of fresh milk, and I think they still do. I grew up in Asia, for example, so aseptic and shelf-stable milk is much more common there. Americans who are raised on the delicious taste of fresh milk, I think, have that automatic preference for fresh milk. Aseptic technology has come a long way, so I think the taste differential, though still present, is not as acute as it has been. I think in certain formats, it's being explored as the it helps solve some of the blessing and the curse of fresh milk, right? Again, going back to mothers, one of the most common use cases is that you can throw it in the kid's backpack. You can take it to sporting events. It doesn't have to be chilled. It's good emergency milk in the pantry. And there's some retailers that call it pantry fresh instead of shelf stable, because shelf stable is like the world's worst name for milk. Frankly, who wants to drink something called that? But we are seeing growth. We're also seeing, I think, more capacity come online, because at this point, I think there's probably more demand for it than production. Um, but fresh milk, HDSD as they call it, is still 90x% of the marketplace. So aseptic is important and growing, but it's not a dominant segment right now. And then ESL is somewhere in the middle, as you know. There are some things that are not as short as traditional milk, like ultra filtered, and other forms of that milk have slightly longer shelf life. So it's like longer code. So those are somewhere in the middle, which makes sense because they don't turn as fast in the grocery store. Nothing turns as fast as conventional milk, to be honest. Like, sometimes customers have a hard time keeping it on a shelf because it's bought so commonly and it is truly a daily habit. And then added value premium milk, which, be it organic or ultra filtered or probiotic, people buy it, but it's probably not consumed at that frequency. So having that slightly longer shelf life makes it easier on customers and on the final user.
Pantry fresh. I am going to never say the other words again. So I'm glad you said that. It was a good change of my vocabulary.
No, I'm stealing from someone. I wish I could remember which customer called it that, and they're gonna be really mad and call me. They're like, "We invented that. Give us credit." But I'm not gonna say the customer out loud in case I get it wrong. So, pantry fresh line. Yeah.
Pantry fresh. I like that. That's really, really good. Well, kind of going back to that fresh milk, and whole milk has really been the star of the 2024 consumption trend news, everything we talked about before. Up to 490 million pounds from 2023, up over 2023, 490 million pounds, and has risen every year since 2013, with one exception of 2021, so maybe a little COVID impact there. So do you think that has been the result of the end of the war on fats, or at least the starting of the end of the war on fats, that people can enjoy whole milk again without the guilt? Or, is it the positive light of protein and what fluid milk delivers, new innovations, or just all of the above?
I think it's a little bit all of the above. I think it does start with the first issue where fats are no longer seen as the enemy in the way that they were at one point. And I think whole milk is just a great nutritional package, right? It has the right ratio of everything, including fats, including nutrients, including protein. I think the protein thing has helped recently, but it's been growing for much before that. And honestly, it's just a really good tasting product, right? I think a lot of people who enjoy milk gravitate towards that format. I mean, there's still plenty of drinkers of skim and 1%. But I think, especially for young families coming into the franchise and children, I think this is a kind of unbeatable sort of like flavor experience in many ways. And so whole milk has been the little engine that could, and now it's becoming the big engine in many ways. And so we're excited to see that. And I think, there's also a big push right now in Congress to allow 2% of whole milk to be served in schools, which will be another great frontier to get that product in the hands of the next generation.
Yeah, you really think it's when, you're forming your behaviors when you're in that elementary and, middle and high school ages, and to think that, they really are fairly limited on their options for what they have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great choice at home. It's a great choice at school, and it just brings the right nutritional profile to the people who need it the most, because it's the most important when you're a very young child and through your tween and teen years to be getting the right nutritional balance. And of the 13 essential nutrients that milk contains, 4 are of concern, meaning Americans are not getting enough of it. And it's actually very hard to find alternative sources. And I think a long time ago, MilkPEP did a campaign where it showed like what you would have to eat in a day to make up for an 8-ounce glass of milk. I mean, it's like this much kale, this much like fish, like this much fruits and vegetables. And so it's a very efficient source of nutrition. And also right now, it's a very affordable source of nutrition, as the economy, it's very complicated right now. I think there's some people who are feeling fine, and there's plenty of people who are, trying to make the dollar stretch further. So it is both a very complete food and it's very accessible from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, that's a really good point. As we talked in the introduction, you have a very diverse background. I just wanted to circle back on, you've had the opportunity to market some amazing products in your career. Can you tell us how marketing fluid milk is different from the other products that you've marketed in your past in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I've become honestly such a genuine advocate for this product. I mean, I'm not from a farm state. You know, I grew up in Singapore. I lived in New York City. I live in Philadelphia. I'm a city girl, right? I am part of the problem of people who don't know where the food comes from. So guilty as charged. So when I was considering this job, I mean, I was just blown away by all of the functional benefits and claims you can make about milk. Having worked in food and CPG a long time, I mean, I've worked on things that were considered healthy, but you can spend 2 years trying to find a single benefit that you can claim that the lawyers will agree to. And in milk, like you wake up every day and you're just drowning in like benefits. If you go to our website, go to natemilk.com, there's like pages and pages of, protein, hydration, focus, sleep, recovery. I mean, I can just go on, and it's all completely natural. And it's not. These are unfortified products. If you go to the premium added value, they add other things, but just milk by itself, it's almost like a miracle product. And I always say, if someone went into a lab and invented milk today, I could sell it for like $20 or $30 a gallon, not $4 a gallon, because it's really unthinkable. And so for me, working on a product that is so much natural goodness is a huge blessing. Having spent hours, of not years, of my life in R&D and lawyers' offices, like negotiating word by word. Can I say this? Can I say that? Can I say this? And with milk, it's just like, oh my, there's so much to say and so much to celebrate. So that's part one. The other thing that's super different for this job is that I'm not selling any individual brand of milk. Most of my career has been in brands, right? I was selling Campbell's soup, not another brand. I was selling Pantene shampoo, not another brand. Here, it's really kind of liberating to try to support a whole category. And so we worry less about branding things in some ways, because as long as people understand that it's dairy milk from a cow, that's good enough for us. And so myself and parts of my team who all grew up in brand driven companies, we've had to learn and unlearn certain things. And it's basically like rising tides, right? We are trying to create an environment in which dairy milk is recognized, appreciated, part of culture. And then the individual brands are then competing in their region and their market for their share of milk. So that's the other biggest difference, I think. It's not as brand driven about an individual brand, but more about the whole category and everything that the category has to offer.
Yeah, that's really great. I'm coming off of World Dairy Expo week right now and heard a couple of people use the milk, nature's most perfect food reference a couple of times. So that's really, an interesting perspective of how you've had to, get approval for what you can say. I'm sure that's through all the agencies, our government agencies and lawyers, like you said, making sure you can say that.
Yeah, I mean, we're still administered by the USDA, and so they are still approving everything that we do say, which is great. But there's honestly so much to say that that's really not a huge limitation compared to other products I've had to market.
I know you have, and you alluded to some of the exciting campaigns and progress paired up with health and wellness. Can you tell us a bit about the Every Woman's Marathon?
Yeah, I mean, Milk has had a long history of supporting athletics and sports figures, of both genders for a long time, including during the Got Milk mustache era. And so, as part of our journey to position milk as a performance drink, we were looking for activities that were widespread. And so, running is one of the most common forms of exercises. And marathoning is like the pinnacle of running, as you can imagine. I mean, there are some people who run like ultra marathons, but for most people, 26 miles is plenty, though there are those who run 100 or 500 miles. God bless them. And so we actually started off by hacking the New York City Marathon in, I guess, 2022. We were not an official sponsor. Another energy beverage was. So we went there to support the women of the race because females are such an important target of ours, both all women, but particularly mothers. And so we showed up and gave them a great experience and celebrated all the women running that race. And a quarter of the women who ran in the New York City Marathon signed up to be part of Team Milk. And so from that kind of kernel of an idea, we went on to support 3 other races the following year and then 12 regional races. But what we learned along the way, which is surprising to me, there was until our race no full-length marathon that was dedicated only to women. There's plenty of half marathons, 10Ks and 5Ks, and there just wasn't one. There had been one for many years that was sunsetted by the organizer, and we saw this big opportunity to bring that back into the race circuit and to say that every woman deserves the right to run and to be fueled as they run. And so it was a pretty brave move, I would say. So we were able to host it in Savannah last November, and really positive results. The whole running track we know delivers about 3 gallons per dollar spent. And we know that 50 or 60% of the women who are aware of the race reported that they will increase the consumption of milk. So it was an amazing community event about bringing women into exercise, into running. Whether you run a marathon or not, it was still a very inspiring storyline. And we do a lot to support the community throughout the year, not just at the race. But most importantly, we've seen it be able to convert and drive purchase.
I'm curious with those numbers, have you seen conversion over from dairy alternatives or people who just were not consuming a product, dairy at all, I guess? What have you seen from those numbers?
I think generally our biggest gains tend to be from more frequency. So, I had a moderate, someone who's drinking it 3 days a week may drink it 4 or 5. People talk a lot about plant-based milk, but it's honestly not like necessarily the biggest threat in our landscape. It's still only, like 10% of the total category. It has not, almond milk at least has not been growing for 5 years. So we don't necessarily get a lot of gains from there, and they aren't necessarily responsible for all losses. It's the plethora of other beverage options, from bottled water to kombucha to health drink number 1 to energy drink number 5. So I think what we see the gains are mostly from people just adding one more occasion of milk to their repertoire, either as a standalone drink, it could be in a coffee, it could be in a smoothie, it could be with over cereal. So I think that's been our biggest source of gain. We don't necessarily focus on non-drinkers per se or rejectors because they tend to be very light volume. So even if you get one more glass from them, it's a lot of work to get that one more glass. If you can get someone who's really drinking milk in some fashion to add it one more time a week, it adds up to a lot of volume because there's so many households that are participating obviously in the milk franchise.
And I know you're representing all milk. Have you seen a conversion of people who've gone to the ultra filtered or the lactose free? What, as far as like the ability to digest the lactose free milk, what have you observed from
Yeah,
that?
lactose free has been growing, I think, nicely for the last 10 plus years or so. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's about 15 or 16% from a volume standpoint, but almost 30 from a dollar standpoint, which makes sense, right? Because it's almost twice as expensive. So I do think there is a lot of perceived lactose intolerance, though to have a true milk allergy is a very, very uncommon habit. I know from my food career that there is a little bit of a GI epidemic in America. Like many people have some form of GI distress. And doctors often will say, oh, just eliminate dairy, whether or not dairy is a cause or not. And so many people have opted into lactose-free as a result. For ultra filtered, it is lactose free, but the other thing I think, which is really the winning formula, is lots of protein, low sugar seems to be having the winning formula, and that has brought a lot of people back to milk, especially with the big rise of desire for accessible protein, affordable protein. So that has been growing really nicely for the last several years and has really helped the category in total grow.
Just wanted to shift gears again. I recently learned about the Milk Cup. This is a really interesting event. Can you tell us all about this?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's not totally dissimilar to the marathon, though it feels like it should have nothing in common with it. But basically, MilkPEP has been involved in supporting video gaming and esports for a long time. I think 10 or 12 years. Um, youth under 18 is a big critical market for milk, as you can imagine, because they represent a disproportionate amount of milk volume relative to the population, something like 15 or 20% of the population, but 40% of volume. And the younger a child is, the more they drink per capita. So kids are always going to be important to us. And if anyone who has kids below 18, you know that video gaming is a big part of their life. And so MilkPEP has been involved in esports for a long time in different fashions. We had a Roblox game. We sponsored an esports team. But as we made this commitment to focus on women in front of and behind the camera as our core audience, we realized that there was as much kind of inequity in esports as there is in regular sports in terms of for professional players. The earning inequality is very high. So the top ranked female player in America who plays Fortnite only makes as much money as the 500th male player, astonishingly enough. Additionally, sadly, female players, be they competitive players or everyday players, face a lot of toxicity online. There's a lot of times where they either get abused, verbally abused, or people won't play with them because in the game of Fortnite, you form these teams. Sometimes you come with your own team. Sometimes you get assigned by the computer to a team. And male players will hear a female voice or see a female name, and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to play with a girl," and then just drop out. And when they showed me the statistics in, I guess, 2023, I was like, what? Like, that still goes on, and it's so common. And so, as part of our mission to get every woman in sport, to support all women in sports, we take the position that esports are sports, and that we want to be a performance drink for gamers. And so we do a lot of things besides the tournament. We have ongoing advertising efforts with a focus benefit. We're starting an academy to train players, but the Milk Cup was kind of like our marathon equivalent. We wanted to create a tournament from scratch, only for women. It is the biggest prize pool because female esports are very unsupported. There's not a lot of big, well-run tournaments that are just for female players. And so we hosted it last year, and people had to compete. There was 3 rounds of qualifiers. So, a few thousand contestants competed to get to the 100 finalists who came to California to compete. And it was a huge success, not just the event, but being part of the esports community. As you can imagine, they are a very tough community. They're very skeptical of brands showing up and just sort of slapping their logo on things and leaving. And so the team has worked so hard, and I give them so much credit. We have an amazing team that's very much part of that community. And they've really found a way for Milk to show up authentically. People are surprised to see us at events. We'll be, again, doing the second year of the event in just a few weeks, actually, just a couple of weeks, at TwitchCon in San Diego. And people are like, Milk, what is Milk doing here? But we are, I think, now a welcome guest. We've established that we're here and we take the sport seriously. We're supporting these players in a major way. Chocolate milk is a yummy option for gamers who want focus, who want nutrition. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, and I've learned a lot. I mean, I have a son who's a gamer, but I don't know anything. So those meetings, I require like a glossary of like even what they're talking about most times. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. So it's coming up in a couple of weeks. Is the plan for 2026 to continue again?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, if it goes as well this year as it did last year, I imagine we want to stay, supporting the community. We may be looking at other titles at the same time, but it was a big success last year, and this year's will be bigger and better, I believe. So far with the qualifiers, we have had more earned coverage. We're doing great in terms of viewership. We're doing great in terms of community support. So if it returns the same results as last year's did, I think we'll definitely be back for 2026.
Great. When you said they always wonder what is Milk doing here? What's been the feedback? What's been the the fit and the growth and kind of metrics that you've seen from that?
Yeah, the gaming track is very productive for us as well. I think it's our second most productive track in terms of marketing mix, so we have been well received. Normally the sponsors of such things are the energy drinks or the carbonated soft drinks. So we're unexpected from that standpoint. But honestly, mean, everyone loves chocolate milk. I mean, I don't know anyone who doesn't, and so I think they are excited when we're there. I think because we've shown up in a way where it shows we understand the community. We've given the competitors a great experience, and we can make great claims, right? That milk supports focus, and focus is really important if you're gaming, even casually. So, but I think they also appreciate how we are appreciating the sport as a sport, because sometimes, especially for my generation or older, they're like, how could that be a sport? How can you fill a whole arena of people watching someone play a video game? It sounds kind of like not what we grew up with. But for young people, they're like, of course it's a sport. It's hard. They train, they have teams, they're dedicated to practicing. They need to stay in good shape and just like any kind of professional athlete. So, I mean, you can get a college degree in e-gaming today. So, it's only our oldies who are thinking of that it's just a hobby, but it is a serious sport. So
Yeah, I think that's really, really great that, it's made its way in and that you're recognizing it as a sport and getting that following. And I mean, logically, from especially the youth that are the consumers of milk. So I think that's a
yeah,
perfect fit.
I mean, I can say as a follow up some of the verbatims and comments we get. Like people are excited to hear from us, and we try to have a very open dialogue. We have something called a Discord community. I don't know if you even know what Discord
I
is.
don't.
But it's I don't think it's a platform it's a messaging platform which was originally designed for people to be able to game and message at the same time. But it's developed into all these communities. Like my son pretty much only uses Discord to talk to his friends. He doesn't use regular texting almost at all. And they will game together and chat. They'll watch movies and chat. And so Milk created our own Discord community server, as it's called. And so we have an ongoing dialogue all year round with them, even when we don't have the event. And we listen to the community. So the year before we launched the tournament, we actually created our own dedicated Fortnite maps. And the Fortnite community said the map they most wanted because they can build your own kind of gaming platforms of different terrain, basically. So they wanted a map that was based on zip lines. So Milk sponsored, and we built 3 zipline based Fortnite terrains for these gamers because that's what they asked for. And then we only learned that by hearing the voice of that community and really taking it seriously. So we have earned our way, hopefully, to where we are today by not just putting a logo on things.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really, really great. There are so many benefits to milk, and I think we're really in, say, the protein era. Not to steal from Taylor Swift and her eras, but can you tell me a bit about the protein push that you're doing?
Yeah, we're very excited about it. I mean, as you say, it is a protein era. We're almost calling it a protein panic because it feels like there's protein everything. I think one of our creative directors found protein breath mints, and I believe there's also a line of protein beer. So, so our position on it is that's all well and good, but milk has been the OG source of protein since the beginning of time, and we're glad that everyone else finally caught up with us. So we're launching a series of sort of social media stunts in some ways, trying to demonstrate that you don't have to chase protein here, there, and everywhere. You can always come back to milk as a really reliable, affordable source. So the first one we did was Skylar Diggins, who is a WNBA player for the Seattle Storm. She's also a well-known fashionista. So we designed a puffer jacket for her, which was filled with fresh milk, called the protein puffer jacket, and she wore it on her tunnel walk to the game. And we got amazing earned coverage in just 3 or 4 days. I think we had like 500 million kind of impressions across the board. And then we did something just last week for coffee where we had influencers go into baristas and ask for a protein boost. And the barista was like, "What's a protein boost?" And like, "Oh, I just want a shot of regular milk in my coffee." And so people were adding like regular milk to their almond lattes, for example. And so this protein boost thing, I'm slightly obsessed with it. We have like 10 or 12 influencers just like promoting it to their followers. And all these baristas are so confused. And so we're like, milk is the original protein boost. So we have like 3 or 4 more things coming in the next few weeks. So stay tuned. I think they're going to get like crazier and crazier, but we want people to understand that milk is the OG protein.
I love it. That's fantastic. Yeah, and it's protein. I like that, the protein panic. And it's also, I've heard conversations of, it's not just the protein, it's all the other vitamins and minerals that come with milk that, we need to keep promoting that as well, which is a really great point.
Yeah, it's nature's perfect food, as you said earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Well, milk is a fun topic of conversation. I didn't even know about the puffer vest. That's pretty cool. What are you most excited about for the future of MilkPEP and milk consumption trends?
Yeah, I mean, at MilkPEP, we always describe our mission as making milk matter more, because milk matters. I mean, being relatively new to the agricultural sector and new to dairy, it's been a real privilege to work on a product that is so important from both a consumer nutrition standpoint, from a economic impact standpoint, from the livelihood of farmers. I mean, as a total city person, I literally had no idea, and now I am filled with awe of all dairy farmers. Like, what a way to make a living! I mean, that is not just a job; that is a vocation, that is a lifestyle, that is a commitment. So I'm really privileged to be part of this industry, and the industry is very welcoming to an outsider like myself. And so, as part of making milk matter more, MilkPEP is very focused on cultural relevance. Like, how do we make milk cool again, basically? In my very first board meeting, January of 2019, before COVID, my headline for the meeting was like, we're going to reclaim milk's mojo. And I feel really excited that I think we made a ton of progress. I mean, the headlines are so much more positive. Celebrities are much more willing to work with us. The social media chatter is more positive. So I do feel like we've worked our way back where milk is better appreciated, and that feels really gratifying for MilkPEP. And so now I think the goal is to translate that into ongoing consumption. I think it's many variables in that, obviously, the balance between traditional milk and the added value milks of different kinds, making sure that customers have it stocked, making sure pricing is important, and then continuing to see innovation grow. I think there's been a lot of great milk innovation in the last several years, and I know more and more processors are entering that space. And milk probably has room to grow because when you look at all the other beverages, there's so many different kinds of innovation, and I feel like milk is just at the beginning of that journey. So I'm hopeful to see more of that, and MilkPEP will be helping to do our part on more of the attitude and sentiment side.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think you should be proud that milk has its mojo again. I think that's definitely happened, I would say. And the future is very bright. So, Yin, we really appreciate you joining us to talk about the efforts of MilkPEP and the positive momentum as it continues to be a rising star for dairy overall.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really glad to be part of this industry and part of MilkPEP.
You've been listening to Yin Woon Rani, the CEO and CMO of MilkPEP. You want to be the first to catch these conversations? Make sure you're following us on YouTube or your favorite podcast player so you don't miss a beat. If you like our episodes, we would invite you to review and share us with your friends. And we thank you from the team here at Hoard's Dairyman.
Thank you for listening to the Hoard's Dairyman podcast. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. And don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube. See you next time.